April 14th, 11:40 p.m. The collision felt like nothing more than a gentle bump, barely interrupting the orchestra playing in the first-class lounge. Rose was in her stateroom, staring at the heart-of-the-ocean necklace Cal had given her, when the ship's engines suddenly stopped. The silence was deafening. Jack was in the third-class common room, sketching by lamplight, when the grinding, scraping sound echoed through the hull. Ice scattered across the deck like scattered pearls. Some passengers laughed, scooping up chunks to toss playfully at each other. Nobody understood. Not yet. Within an hour, the truth became undeniable. The unsinkable ship was sinking, her bow already dipping toward the hungry Atlantic. Panic spread like wildfire as passengers realized there weren't enough lifeboats for everyone aboard. Rose fought through the chaos to find Jack, her heart hammering with terror that had nothing to do with the ship's fate, and everything to do with possibly losing him. She found him helping load women and children into the boats, his face grim but determined. Rose. Jack's relief was palpable as he caught her in his arms. Thank God. You need to get in a boat. Now. Not without you, Rose said fiercely. I won't leave you. You have to. I'll get on another boat, I promise. But they both knew the truth. There were no other boats for third-class passengers like Jack. The wealthy were being saved first, and time was running out. Cal appeared through the crowd, his face a mask of controlled desperation. Rose, here quickly. He grabbed her arm, pulling her toward a lifeboat. I'm not going, Rose said, pulling away. The hell you're not. Cal's composure cracked. I forbid it. I make my own choices now, Rose declared, her voice ringing with newfound strength. As the lifeboat began to lower, she made the decision that would define her life. At the last second, she climbed back onto the sinking ship. Rose, what are you doing? Jack was incredulous, torn between joy and terror. I couldn't go. I couldn't leave you. Rose threw herself into his arms. If we're going to die, we die together. What followed were the longest and most precious hours of their lives. As Titanic's stern rose higher into the star-filled sky, Jack and Rose fought together for survival. They ran through flooding corridors, climbed over debris, and held each other close as the magnificent ship broke apart and sank into the icy depths. The water was a shock so brutal it stopped their hearts for precious seconds. Jack found a piece of debris, wooden paneling that could barely support one person. Get on, he gasped, his lips already blue with cold. Jack, there's room for both of us. No, there isn't. Get on, Rose, please. Rose climbed onto the makeshift raft, reaching desperately for Jack's hand. He held on, floating in the deadly water, his body already beginning to shut down from hypothermia. I love you, Rose, Jack whispered, his voice growing weaker. Promise me you'll survive. Promise me you'll live a full life, no matter what, and never let go of that promise. I promise, Rose sobbed, her tears freezing on her cheeks. I'll never let go, Jack. I'll never let go. But she had to. As the rescue ship Carpathia's lights appeared on the horizon, Jack's hand slipped from hers, and he sank beneath the black water, taking a piece of her soul with him. Rose survived. She lived, as she promised, a full and remarkable life. She became an actress, a pilot, a woman who seized every adventure and opportunity. She married, had children, traveled the world. But part of her heart remained forever in that freezing Atlantic water with a penniless artist who had given her everything. 84 years later, as an old woman surrounded by the treasures of a life fully lived, Rose would return to those waters one final time. The heart of the ocean, that symbol of her gilded prison, would find its rest in the depths beside Titanic's remains. And somewhere in the eternal darkness, two souls would dance together again, their love finally free from the constraints of time, class, and mortality. Jack had won those tickets in a poker game, thinking he'd gained passage to a new life. He had no way of knowing he'd actually won something far more precious and far more costly. A love that would echo through eternity, as unsinkable as the human heart itself. The end. Where are you taking me? Rose laughed breathlessly as Jack pulled her through Titanic's maze of corridors. She had never felt so alive, so recklessly free. After their encounter at the stern 2 nights ago, She couldn't stop thinking about the strange, wonderful boy from steerage. "You'll see," Jack grinned, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "Trust me." They descended into the heart of the ship, where third-class passengers had turned the general room into a carnival of music and laughter. Irish fiddles sang alongside Italian guitars, children danced between adults' legs, and the air thrummed with pure, unbridled joy. "Jack, there you are," Fabrizio called out, then stopped short when he saw Rose. "Madonna mia, everyone," Jack announced proudly. "I'd like you to meet Rose." Rose felt a moment of panic. These people would surely recognize her, surely reject the first-class princess who didn't belong in their world. But instead she was welcomed with warm smiles and curious glances, no judgment in sight. "Can you dance?" asked Tommy, a young Irish man with kind eyes. Rose hesitated. She knew waltzes and formal steps, the rigid choreography of high society. But this music called for something entirely different, something real. "I don't know how," she admitted. Jack stepped forward, extending his hand. "Then I'll teach you." What followed was the most magical hour of Rose's life. Jack spun her around the crowded floor, teaching her steps that came from the heart rather than a dance master's instruction. She laughed until her sides ached, drank beer from a pewter mug, and felt herself becoming someone she'd never been allowed to be. "You're different from everyone I know," she told Jack during a quiet moment, their faces inches apart as they swayed to a gentle Irish ballad. "How so?" "You don't try to control me. You don't tell me what to think or how to feel." Rose's voice grew soft. "You see me." Jack's hand cupped her face gently. "I see a woman trapped in a life that's killing her spirit, but I also see someone brave enough to climb over a ship's railing and strong enough to climb back." Their first kiss was tender, tentative, tasting of beer and possibility. Around them, the party continued, but they were lost in their own world. The next morning brought harsh reality. Cal discovered Rose's adventure, his fury cold and calculating. At breakfast, his hand grasped her wrist with bruising force. "You are my fiancée," he hissed, low enough that other passengers couldn't hear. "My property, and you will not shame me again." "I'm not anyone's property," Rose whispered back, but her voice shook. "Aren't you?" Cal's smile was cruel. "Your mother's debts, your family's reputation, all hanging by a thread that I control. Cross me again, and I'll cut it." That afternoon, Rose met Jack at their secret spot on the bow. The wind whipped her hair as she pressed against him, desperate to memorize every detail of his face. "Take me away, Jack," she whispered. "When we dock in New York, take me away from all of this." "Are you sure?" Jack searched her eyes. "I have nothing to offer you but love. That's all I've ever wanted." As the sun set over the calm Atlantic, they made their plans. In 2 days, they would dock in New York, and Rose would disappear into the crowd with Jack, leaving behind her gilded cage forever. But in the ship's depths, the lookouts strained their eyes against the moonless night, and the ocean ahead held secrets that would change everything. Their love had bloomed like a flower in spring, but winter was coming faster than anyone could imagine. Time was running out, and neither of them knew it. April 10th, 1912. The RMS Titanic rose from Southampton dock like a floating palace, her 4 massive funnels piercing the sky. Jack pressed against the third-class railing, his breath forming small clouds in the crisp air as he watched first-class passengers board with their mountains of luggage and armies of servants. "Can you believe this, Jack?" Fabrizio bounced beside him like an excited child. "We're really doing it. America, here we come." But Jack's attention had been captured by something else entirely. There, stepping gracefully from a gleaming automobile, was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Red hair caught the morning light like fire, and even from this distance he could sense something profound in her bearing, a sadness that seemed to weigh down her elegant shoulders. Rose DeWitt Bukater moved through the crowd like a sleepwalker, her mother's sharp voice cutting through the harbor noise. "Rose, straighten up. Remember who you are." Beside them walked Cal Hockley, Rose's fiancé, his cold eyes surveying his possessions, and Rose was clearly among them. "I can't breathe," Rose whispered to herself, her hand unconsciously moving to her throat. The diamond necklace Cal had given her felt like a noose, beautiful and suffocating. Around her, the first-class world moved in its practiced choreography of wealth and expectation, but she felt utterly alone. 3 days passed. Jack spent his time exploring every inch of the ship he could access, sketching passengers and crew, living more fully than he had in months. But he couldn't forget the red-haired girl. He'd caught glimpses of her, standing at the first-class promenade, always surrounded but somehow isolated, like a caged bird in a golden prison. On April 14th, everything changed. The night was crystal clear, the stars reflecting off the calm ocean like scattered diamonds. Jack was at the bow, arms spread wide, shouting, "I'm the king of the world," when he heard it, a strangled sob echoing from the stern. He found her there, Rose, climbing over the railing in her elegant evening gown, tears streaming down her face. The sight hit him like a physical blow. "Don't do it," he called softly, his voice cutting through the wind. Rose turned, startled. "Stay back. Don't come any closer." "All right, I'll stay right here." Jack's voice was gentle but firm. "You don't want to do this. Trust me. You don't know anything about me." Rose's voice cracked with desperation. "I know you're in first class, which means you're probably used to getting what you want. But this isn't the answer." Jack slowly moved closer. "My name's Jack Dawson. I'm Rose DeWitt Bucator." "Well, Rose, you've got beautiful eyes, and I'd hate to see them closed forever. Come back over that railing, and we'll talk about this properly." Something in his voice, honest, warm, without judgment, made Rose hesitate. For the first time in months, someone was speaking to her like a person, not a possession. "Give me your hand," Jack said when she finally nodded. The moment their fingers touched, both felt it. An electric connection that seemed to bridge not just the space between them, but the vast divide of their different worlds. As Jack helped her back onto the deck, Rose looked into his eyes and saw something she'd never known she was searching for: freedom. Neither knew they had just 4 days to discover a love that would echo through eternity. The Smoky Tavern in Southampton reeked of desperation and cheap whiskey. Jack Dawson stared at his final 2 coins, knowing they represented his last chance at escaping the grinding poverty that had followed him across Europe. At 20, he had already seen more hardship than most men twice his age, but his optimism remained unshakable, a trait that both saved and cursed him. "Your move, American," sneered Sven, the Swedish immigrant across the table. The poker game had been going for 3 hours, and everything hung on this final hand. Jack's heart hammered as he looked at his cards. A straight flush. His hands trembled slightly as he pushed his meager coins forward. "I'm all in." Olaf, Sven's companion, laughed harshly. "With those pennies? This is a man's game." He reached into his coat and produced 2 tickets, their edges worn but still bearing the unmistakable logo, White Star Line. 3rd-class passage on Titanic, sailing tomorrow. The tavern fell silent. Everyone knew about Titanic, the unsinkable ship, the maiden voyage, the promise of America that seemed as distant as the stars. "Those tickets are worth more than everything you own," Sven added, his eyes glinting with malice. "But if you're so confident..." Jack's mind raced. This was insanity. Those tickets represented passage to a new world, a chance at life he'd never dreamed possible. But his gut told him his hand was unbeatable. "Deal me in," he whispered. The cards fell like dominoes of destiny. Sven revealed his full house with a triumphant grin that slowly melted as Jack laid down his straight flush. The tavern erupted. Olaf cursed in Swedish, and Jack Dawson, penniless artist and dreamer, became the owner of 2 tickets aboard the most magnificent ship ever built. "You don't know what you've done," Sven hissed as Jack pocketed the precious tickets. "That ship, there's something wrong about it. Mark my words, American, you've just bought your death." Jack ignored the bitter words, his heart soaring. Tomorrow, he would board Titanic with his friend Fabrizio, leaving behind the cobblestone streets and empty stomachs of Europe. He had no way of knowing that in just 4 days he would meet a girl whose eyes held the ocean's depth, whose spirit burned brighter than the ship's grand chandeliers. As he stumbled out into the cool Southampton night, tickets clutched in his fist, Jack Dawson thought he had won everything. He had no idea that fate had only just begun to play its hand, and that the greatest prize of all would slip through his fingers like ice-cold water in the North Atlantic darkness. The die was cast, the ship waited, and destiny held its breath.